Hi,
Relax every
Louisa.
second.
Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Alicia Robinson Assemanning. Welcome to my podcast. For those who don't know me, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm an educator, and I'm an avid advocate. I just love that term. Now, as a woman who's walked through the valley of pain with regards to baby loss, pregnancy loss, as some people would say, I believe I've found some amount of purpose on the other side. Now, what I've done is I've created a platform for the everyday woman, the one who smiles through suffering, and women who have been able to rebuild after loss. And I use that term rebuild very, very loosely. Now, the reason why we choose to have a platform like this is that we recognize your tears for those who have experienced baby loss, is experiencing baby loss, and will experience baby loss. Maybe you won't come across a video today. Maybe you will at some other point. We've created this platform for you. Now, on this podcast, we are breaking the silence really around baby loss. We're also breaking the silence around mental health, around motherhood, womanhood, and everything in between. Now, this space is for the unheard, it's for the unseen, and to be honest, it's for those who carry pain silently. Now, this is more than a podcast, it's a movement, and you are welcome. Now, joining me today, let me just make a confession. I sneak on Louisa's page a lot. And one of the reasons why I do that is because I believe that Louisa is a force to be reckoned with. And I believe as well that Louisa is a fearless, absolutely fearless voice. She's not just a mother who has experienced heartbreaking loss, but Louisa is also a woman who has taken that grief and transformed it into purpose. But rather than retreat, she's risen. And I believe that Louisa will tell us today about some of the great work that she's doing. Thank you so, so much for meeting with me today, Louisa. Would you like to give a brief introduction of yourself?
Hi, Alicia. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for creating this platform as well. I think it's
You
amazing what you're doing and it's very
thank
much needed. So thank you.
you so
So yes, I'm a bereaved parent. I've suffered a few losses and the catalyst for me there was when I lost my son in 2020. My firstborn son, Zion Esau Hendrickson, he was born prematurely and he survived for 47 minutes. And I use the narrative, he survived for 47 minutes, because people would often say he passed away after 47 minutes. I don't choose to use
much.
that narrative because I like to focus on the positives where I can.
Of
So,
course, of course.
yeah, so I always say he survived for 47 minutes, and he did. He was, according to the doctors, and I say this loosely because I don't agree, but according to the doctors, I was 22 weeks and 5 days into my pregnancy. So
Okay.
2 days shy of 23 weeks. So,
Mm-hmm. So sorry for your loss. I know you've had several, like you mentioned, but would you like to take a minute actually just to go through as much obviously as you're willing to share? Please take some time, a minute or so around, um, and explain to us your experience about each of those losses and what do you wish more people would understand about those early days? Because I haven't gone through it. I know no two losses are the same. So share with us around your experiences, please.
yeah, you're absolutely right. Each experience was very different. So, to, in a brief, my story is in the space of 8 years, I was pregnant 7 times. I gave birth 4 times, and I got to take 3 babies home with me. So, in between my first two children, I suffered 3 consecutive miscarriages, and
I'm
it
sorry.
stopped at three. Thank you. It stopped at three because the policy here in this country is you have to have 3 consecutive miscarriages before they'll start to do any tests or look into any causes as to why that's happening. So after my third one, I did have the test done and I was diagnosed with lupus anticoagulant, I think is how you say it. Sticky blood Sticky blood syndrome is a simple name for it. It's because the blood becomes thick and it stops the blood flow through the placenta. So it stops the baby from getting what they need. So what was happening to me was I was losing my babies around 7 weeks. And that was in a very short space of time as well. It's probably been about a year and a half that I lost 3 babies. So there's things that people don't always think about especially when it comes to early loss, how much your
Mhm.
hormones are impacted, for example. I was very hormonal for the best part of a year and a half. So someone like my husband, for example, he felt it. He would have known the difference. Um, and then after I'd had the treatment, I then went on to have a successful pregnancy with my second daughter. But I mean, because of the condition I've got, I have to inject myself every day from as soon as there's a heartbeat. So from 6 weeks pregnancy normally up until I give birth, and for 6 weeks, I think, until after I've had the baby, I have to inject myself, and I absolutely hate needles. So having to do that to myself every day is an absolute nightmare. But that just shows you how much people are willing to sacrifice for their children.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. So we went on and we had a successful pregnancy with our second daughter. Um, and then as soon as I had her, literally as soon as she was born, I knew straight away I wanted another one. Because she was just so
Mhm.
beautiful. She was such a little doll.
Oh,
And yeah, I said to my husband then, I want another one. He was an only child, so he was happy with one child. So he was on number two
oh,
at this point. He wasn't that keen to go to number three, but he wasn't. We wasn't married at the time actually. So he proposed to me
okay.
when my youngest daughter was about one. Um, and when I said yes, I was like, on the condition that you'll give me another baby. So he agreed, and we tried, and I fell pregnant really quite quickly. My issue was never falling pregnant. I always fell pregnant quite quickly. It was keeping the babies. That was what my issue was. But at this point, we were very confident. I'd been diagnosed. We knew what the treatment plan was. We'd already had a baby, and our pregnancy was successful. We had no problems. Well, um, nothing major anyway. So when we fell pregnant with our son, it was amazing. I was so relaxed. I was so looking forward to him. It's crazy when you think about it, because I always think that certain things are destined and we don't always realize it at the time. But I always remember
Of course.
when I fell pregnant with him, I think I literally knew from the day that I fell pregnant that I was pregnant with him. And I kid you not, and I'm not just saying this because he's not here, but I absolutely loved him so much from that moment
Mm.
that I knew I was pregnant.
You
And
were
it was different.
pregnant.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
different. I've been pregnant a number of times. This time was different. I was so in love with this baby. And then we went into lockdown. So it was 2020. We'd gone into lockdown. The whole world had basically turned upside down.
Of
Nobody knew
course.
what was going on. It was really scary times. I remember being at work, and I worked in retirement living. I managed some support accommodations,
Sure.
and so I was classed as a frontline worker. So I was having to go into work. My office was based in the building where everybody's flats were, and I would have to go and visit people in their flats and do welfare checks and things like that. And it was my job to manage the building. So there was lots of stuff I was responsible for, and I was in contact with a lot of people. And I remember being really worried about it and speaking to my manager at the time. And at that point, pregnant ladies hadn't been classed as high risk. But I was like, I am high risk. I don't want to do this. I don't want to jeopardize, put my baby at any risk. But I still had
Was
to keep on working. And then
Mhm.
I remember I think it was in the end of March, my kids got a couple of symptoms of COVID, and this is before lockdown. So we self isolated anyway. And while we were self isolating, then the whole country went into lockdown. But for us, lockdown didn't impact us like everybody else did. I don't think it was a nice time at the beginning for us. We was enjoying our family time. Like we could fully look around the world and see how lucky we were to have
Yes,
each other. And
of
we would
course.
often say that as well. Like we would often say how lucky we were and how much we appreciated each other, because I'd lost one of my good friends in that time in the March.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
He'd passed away very suddenly, and his partner was my best friend, and she was in exactly the same position as me. They'd already had two kids. She was pregnant with their third. and he passed away, and it was so sad, so sad. And I remember me and my husband talking at the time and just saying how lucky that we were that we still had each other. And the
Of
kids had
course,
both of
yes.
us, and we were, we had everything. We
Mm.
had our house. We didn't need anything. Um, and then April came, and in that month, the beginning of the month, I remember the Easter. I think it was Easter Monday. My husband's dad, grandmother, and uncle were all diagnosed with COVID on the same day and rushed to hospital.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So it was really scary times. His grandmother is in her 80s at the time, but surprisingly, she was the first one out of hospital.
Oh,
um,
wow. Strong.
yeah, yeah. His uncle was there for a couple of weeks, but his dad actually ended up getting really poorly, and he was actually on a ventilator for 4.5 weeks.
And how is he now?
Thank, thank goodness he is fine. But at the
Oh,
time, we had no idea because everybody that was going on a ventilator at that time wasn't coming
yeah,
off.
yeah.
So it was
It was
very
really
scary.
unpredictable then, wasn't it?
Yeah, and nobody at that it was right at the beginning, so nobody really knew how to manage it either. At that point, they were just experimenting on everybody. This is when they were flipping people around and all sorts. Like my father-in-law, he ended up having to have the tube put in his neck because he'd had the other one for so long, so they had to have the tube put in his neck. And then when he came off, he actually had to learn to walk again, talk again, do all of that. So we had all of this stuff going on in the background. We were still very grateful about everything that was in our lives. And
Of
then
course.
on the it was a Thursday. I always remember, actually, in fact, it was a Monday. I always remember um, I was 20 weeks. I'd had my 20-week scan, so I'd gone past that. And then I randomly started to get discharge. And I thought, this is not right. So I'd rang the midwife. No, actually, by the Thursday, it then turned to blood. So I had rang the midwife. So just to give a bit of backstory, even with my first pregnancy, I bled.
Yes.
And that was a successful pregnancy. So I was used to seeing a bit of blood in a pregnancy. So I'd called the midwife and said to them, I couldn't get hold of her on the Thursday, so I didn't get to speak to her until the Friday. And I called her and explained to her what was happening. And she'd said about coming into the hospital to see her for a check. So on the Saturday, I'd gone into the hospital to see her. That was the earliest appointment she can give me. And I remember, I think just before I'd gone to the hospital, I was bleeding. I'd gone to the toilet, and I had what looked like a show. And I remember taking a photo of it. I was that concerned. I took a photo of it so I could show the midwife when I got to the hospital. And I went to the hospital, and I remember telling her that I was having some tightenings and pains and feeling uncomfortable. I showed her the picture. She actually, her words were actually, "Oh, if I didn't know any better, I would say that was a show." Unfortunately, I didn't really at that point. I never considered that I was in labor, even though I was showing all the
Right.
signs of labor.
Right. Yes. Yes.
It didn't enter my head that actually it did a couple of times, but even then I still dismissed it because I thought, no, I'm not in labor. But as the midwife, I believe she shouldn't have dismissed that when she said, if I didn't know any better, well, you did know better because you were the midwife,
Hmm.
you were the
She second
professional.
guessed herself too. Yeah, she second
Yeah.
guessed herself too.
So at that point, she then told me that she thought I had an onset of a urine infection and told me to go and swab myself, and she would take the sample off and send it off for testing, and sent me home. And she told me if there's any more pains, if the pains get any worse, is what she said, then to come back. So I went home. And actually, at that point, I was glad to go home because I did not want to be in the hospital. I was so petrified of
Mhm.
COVID, catching
Yeah.
COVID. I didn't want to be there. So I was happy to go home. But the pains continued. And I remember on the Sunday, it was a lovely hot day because if people remember that April was lovely. The weather was lovely. And I was sat in the garden. My husband was going out on the bike ride with the kids. He asked me if I wanted to come, and I said no because I felt that uncomfortable. I was like, I can't. I just need to rest. I'm not going to come. But
Yes.
I was on the phone to my sister, and we were talking, and I'd gone to the toilet, and then I said to her, we were joking, and I said, oh, if I didn't know any better, like the midwife, if I didn't know any better, I'd think my body's telling me to push. And we kind of just laughed it off again because I was so early in my pregnancy. I just didn't ever
Yeah.
expect that to be the case. So that night I'd gone to bed, and then early hours in the morning, about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd woke up.
Yeah.
I was in so much pain. I couldn't sleep. So the pain had woke me up out of my sleep. So
But
at this point,
contractions had possibly now started.
well, yeah, and to be honest, with hindsight now, I was probably having contractions the whole time, but because um I was describing it as tightenings and feeling uncomfortable, it wasn't necessarily perceived as that. So
Oh,
and the thing is, I actually labour quite well. So, in all my labours, I've only ever had gas and air, and they've not been very long labours either. So,
okay.
but it didn't enter my head that I'd say that I was pregnant. But at this point, when it woke me up in the night, I knew something wasn't right. But again, in my head, I'm still thinking I've got a urine infection. That's why, because I've been told that urine infections can be really painful. And this is what the
Yes.
midwife has said to me. So this is what I'm thinking. So I rang the hospital. They've told me to come in. I think it's about 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning at this point. And I woke my husband up and I've told him. But because his grandmother, she used to live about 10 doors down from us. And
Right.
after she was diagnosed with COVID, she went
COVID,
home,
yes.
and her other grandson, so my husband's cousin, he lived with her at the time, and he was caring for her, but he has a condition that when he gets stressed out, he literally collapses, and his whole body shuts down and he collapses.
Oh
And this is,
no.
yes, and this happened a week or so before I lost my son. So this had happened, and my husband had got a call, so he had to rush down there because what was actually happening is his cousin was lying. He passed out and he was lying on his back, but he was vomiting and choking on his
Oh
vomit. So
no. Oh goodness.
yeah, yeah. So had my husband not have gone there, we don't know what would have happened, but he had no choice. He had to go there. He basically saved his cousin's life and then helped sort out his grandma afterwards as well. I mean, he wore PPE, he was protected, he had aprons on, he had masks on, gloves on, everything. Because obviously I was pregnant. We were
Of
cautious.
course, you weren't taking any risks, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I made him sleep in a spare bedroom for a week after that. So, but because of that, it was 12 days before I went to the hospital. I remember that. That's one thing I do remember because he'd had contact with his grandmother 12 days before they wouldn't allow him in the hospital. So I remember leaving him at home with the kids, and I drove myself to the hospital. I don't know how, but I did. I drove myself to the hospital. Again, in my head, I'm still thinking, I've got a urine
You've
infection.
got a
I'm
urine
just going for
infection.
antibiotics
Yes.
or something. Um,
Yes.
so I've gone to the hospital, I've got to delivery, and I remember the doctor and the midwife, I believe, and I think it was midwife, not a nurse, midwife. And they both went to examine me, and they use a specular thing, and they go to examine
Yeah.
you. Well, they didn't need that because my labour was so far developed that they could visibly see the sac without even using that. That's how,
Oh no.
yeah, yeah. And I remember them; they like visibly jumped back. Like, so
Oh
obviously now at
wow.
this point, I'm like, well, what's going on? Like, this is when it hits home that something's not right, and it's really quite serious. Um, weeks of gestation. So anyone that doesn't know, a baby that's born under 24 weeks
Yes.
sleeping is classed as a late miscarriage. If they're born
Mm-hmm.
over 24 weeks sleeping, they're classed as a stillbirth. So I was told by three different doctors at three different occasions that, in layman's terms, you're going to have your baby and he's going to die and he's going to be classed as a miscarriage. So by this point, we knew he was having a boy. I think it was the week before I'd had the scan and we'd
Yeah.
confirmed it. He was a boy. He was our first boy. We were so excited. I mean, we'd wanted a boy. I'd wanted a boy in every single pregnancy. And we hadn't had a boy in the family for like 18 years. My nephew was 18 at the time. So the whole family was excited to have this boy. So yeah, so they told me your son's gonna die. You can have your son. He's gonna die. And he's gonna be classed as a miscarriage. And at this point, I was like, well, I didn't even know. At that point, I didn't even know there was such thing as a late miscarriage because I was like, oh, I've had three miscarriages and this was nothing like this. Like they were so early on that I couldn't feel the babies. I couldn't like connect with the
Of
babies
course,
like I
yeah.
I connected with him. Uh, Um,
But this one was different, wasn't it?
this was very different. Like I said, I had been feeling him moving around for ages. I mean, he was my third baby. I mean, he was my third baby, but my sixth pregnancy. So I was showing quite quickly. quite soon. So, but I loved it. I was so in awe of him. I used to sit and talk to him all the time. And so when they said to me, I'm having a miscarriage, I couldn't comprehend that. I was like, it's not miscarriage. I've had them. That's not the same thing. But then it turns out, yeah, there's such thing as an early miscarriage and a late miscarriage.
Of
So
course.
yeah, so that's what they said to me. And because of my weeks of gestation, they didn't give me any care. They only gave me palliative care. They were never going to try and save my son's life. All they did was, which tormented me at the time, if I'm honest, was they made me lie down on the bed with my bum in the air. So my head was tilted backwards and my bum was in the air, and not to move. So I'd have to go for a wee on a bedpan. Like I couldn't move. I was like that for like over 12 hours.
My goodness.
Yeah, and like I said,
Now,
that's quite.
no, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. I want to ask you a question with regards to obviously him being alive for 47 minutes. But because he was under 24 weeks as well, was there some determinations? Was there some decisions made and so on and so forth? So if you can incorporate that as well into as you continue to speak, that would
Yeah,
be great.
yeah. So that's so yeah, he was born breathing, so that changed everything. So again, I wasn't expecting it. I was not prepared for it. I was never told that was even a possibility that he could be born breathing. So when he was born, I mean, it was so devastating because my husband couldn't be there. My sister, thank God, she was able to come with me and she supported me through it. And we FaceTimed my husband. So I knew I'm so in tune with my body. I knew which push was going to push him out. So I told my sister, it's time. Because what I did was I was there for nearly 12 hours, because I did everything I possibly could do to keep him in. Because again, they led me to believe that I could potentially keep him in for another week. There was only one doctor, a male doctor actually, that was quite frank and honest with me. The rest of them led me to believe that if I lied on that bed and stayed like that, Black gravity was my friend, and there was a chance that I could keep him in for another week. And if I could do that, then he's got a chance of surviving. So I sat there and we prayed. We all prayed. I got my sister to go in through my phone, through every single WhatsApp group that I had. And I said to tell them what's happening and to tell them to pray for my son. I remember there was one WhatsApp group that I was like, don't put it in there because my friend was pregnant at the time. And I was like, I don't want to scare her. Don't worry her, but do it in the other groups. Um, and then, so after about, say, nearly 12 hours, I couldn't hold him in anymore. I tried my best and I couldn't. And it was so devastating because I knew that I was going to push him out for him to die. And I knew while he was in my tummy, he was absolutely fine. But I just couldn't
What
keep him
was,
in there.
excuse me, Louisa, what was the reason for him? Was he unwell? What was the reason for or the cause of his death? Is there
I,
any sort of knowledge behind that?
the only thing I know, again, because I feel like I've not had the greatest treatment from the NHS. I was promised. So after he was born and after he passed away, the consultant in charge of my care, she did promise me that they would investigate and find out why this happened and make sure it never happened again. That lasted for the whole of 5 minutes because they were supposed to test my placenta. They never did. Because it was COVID, I don't think I would have opted for it anyway, but because it was COVID, we wasn't even given the option to have an autopsy to find out if there was any cause. The only thing that they knew is that I had an infection, but they don't know
Right,
if I had an infection and then that caused my cervix to open, or if my cervix was open and that caused the infection. Nobody knows which way around it
right.
is. And I think
I'm
the only
so
reason why they
sorry.
know that much, thank you. But yeah, I think the only reason why they know that much is because a similar thing happened to me again afterwards with my rainbow baby. So,
Right.
um, so he was born and he was born alive, which was amazing because nobody expected that. And I got to have 47 precious minutes with my son, and they put him straight onto my chest, and that is just where he stayed for his whole entire life. And I could feel him. I could feel him breathing. I mean, I remember feeling so scared to move. I literally didn't move
Just lay
from my
there.
neck down, yeah, because I was so petrified that I was going to hurt him. I didn't know what he was feeling. I didn't know if he was okay or not. So I just stayed as still as I could and just held him. Um,
Oh,
and it's 47 minutes. And he weighed 480 grams, I believe, off the top of my head.
okay.
Um, so as I know now, which I didn't know at the time, but I know now, that is actually closer to a 24-week-old baby's weight. And my argument was at the time, I kept asking them, can you just measure him again, please? Because I believe that he's bigger than what you think he
He's
is.
older. Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
their hospital
possibly.
policy, I said the hospital policy was to from 23 weeks to give active care. According to them, I was 22 weeks and 5 days. So my
2 days.
argument was,
What is it worth? What is it worth? 2 days. Because I know a young man, I was gonna say a young boy, but he's not a young boy, he's 30 soon. And his mother is somebody I absolutely respect, and he was born at 20 weeks. And again, similar story.
wow.
Yeah, he was born at 20 weeks and similar story. He came out breathing and she was told, "Oh, mom, they made her ready." He's going to be 30 soon.
Oh, that's amazing. And this is
He
the
is
thing.
going to be
So
30.
my
Yes.
youngest brother, who's 35 now, I believe, he was born prematurely. He was 3 months premature. So, and I always remember my mum saying he weighed less than a bag of sugar when he was born. So I had that in my mind. This is why I was getting everybody to pray because I genuinely thought maybe,
You're hopeful.
my brother survived, so why can't my son? So
Exactly.
it was devastating when he passed away. Um, but I'm so grateful for those 47 minutes because it changed everything for me. And so he was the catalyst for me for everything. So I had my 3 miscarriages and I dealt with that in isolation, in silence. I felt like I didn't have permission to grieve, that it wasn't something that I should be talking about. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't even feel like people wanted to hear it. It wasn't acknowledged as a loss. In fact, my little brother, and I will give him his flowers. He was the only person that acknowledged my first miscarriage, as a loss.
Mhm.
I don't think I really
Oh,
told that many
sorry.
people
Yes.
after the first one. I kept the others to myself. But
Mhm.
the first one, he came round, as you do in West Indian households. He came round with drink and food, and and I was even shocked, if I'm honest with you. I was like, "Oh, you're doing this
Because
for
you don't
me?"
expect, yeah, you don't expect it, do you? It's like, if I may just interject just for a few seconds, when I experienced my first loss, that was similar to your baby's gestational age. And baby passed. Now, my parents had never experienced a loss. My parents have 8 children, and so a loss was new to them. I've got 5 sisters, but 2 of them at the time were of childbearing age, and they were married and they had children as well. They hadn't experienced the loss, and that was new to me. New to my sisters, new to my parents, new to my husband's side of the family. Because again, he's got 3 older sisters. Only one of them has got children, and she hadn't experienced the loss. Now, I believe his mum had experienced the loss many, many, many moons ago, because my husband is in his late 40s and he's the last born. So his mum had a loss previous to him being born. So you can understand how many years ago that was. And in their culture as well, that's not, in quotes, that's not something you cry about. You kind of just
Mm,
acknowledge that, okay, I was pregnant, baby's gone. Maybe baby would have been, there's lots of maybes
mm,
surrounding baby not being here, and everybody is expected to be comfortable with that, including mom. Now, when my first pregnancy was lost, it absolutely devastated me. And I wasn't sure if I was a mother because
mm,
I feel like the world imposed that on me. My sisters had children. Now, what was good for me is that Mother's Day in both England, and my family are from the Americas. So, Mother's Day had passed in both England and America. And thankfully for me, by the time Mother's Day had come the following year, I was pregnant again. But there was that dilemma of, My mother,
Yeah.
my loss
Yeah.
outside of my family, my loss wasn't acknowledged as such. It was like, okay, so baby's died. Now what?
Mm,
Nobody's really interested in this story. Not, I was at university at the time. I was expected to just sort of, get on with it, continue on with my master's dissertation. Um, I was expected to attend classes because obviously if you have a particular amount of absences, then you have to be called in. And while they did express some amount of graciousness with that, I feel a lot more could have been done, even
mm,
within, being a matured student, even within the university setting. The administrator she did always say to me, there's an open door policy. If you feel like coming and crying, you just knock on my door. If I see that there are tears in your eyes or tears on your face, I will not ask you any questions except you want to speak. And I really sort of cherish her for that. I mean, we've lost touch now, but grateful that she acknowledged the difficulty I was experiencing at the time. And so thank you for raising that. And I really do believe that um unfortunately your brother did well
mm.
standing out
Good.
from the crowd, but
Yeah.
unfortunately the crowd does go with the flow in that these are not things that are acknowledged. The fact that I don't have a baby in my hand, I mean, I do have three live births, thank God, my beautiful, beautiful children. But I speak for all women. The fact that I don't have a baby in my hand, it does not determine whether you decide if I'm a mother or not.
Yeah.
Because there are some women who will never carry babies in their arms that are their own. Some women are
Yeah.
mothers by heart, some women are mothers by adoption.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
this is my go on,
go
I was gonna say
ahead.
this is
Yes,
this is
please.
always my argument because at what point do we put a value on life? If you lost your child when they were 10 years old, at no point would anybody ever say you wasn't a mother.
There
So
you go. Of
yeah, it wouldn't even be considered. So what's the
course.
difference if you're losing a baby at 7 weeks, if you lose a baby at 37 weeks? I always
Pain is
say
the same.
everyone's hard is hard. We cannot make judgments and presume to understand how these impact people. Some people, it may impact them differently. For me, my miscarriages, they impacted me a lot. I didn't always allow myself to acknowledge that at the time. The first one, I had it. I went to the hospital. I just got a promotion at work and I knew something wasn't right. I'd gone to the hospital and I also knew that the hospital wouldn't be able to do anything for me if I was having a miscarriage. So I went back to work. I carried on working. I miscarried whilst I was still working and I didn't stop working. I carried on. I had a promotion. I was running three hostels. There was lots that I needed to do. So, and that was my way of not thinking about it.
Coping. Yeah,
Yeah.
coping. We
Yeah.
develop these coping mechanisms and coping strategies because again, um, creating that space for loss within maternal health care is just not present. And really think about it. If there was a space, if there was information, knowledge of like available, readily available, bereavement midwives, I mean, not even bereavement midwives only, I mean the whole NHS is just so stretched, and the cutbacks as well
Mm-hmm.
that I mean, I don't even want to touch on that today, but
Yeah. Oh
um,
God.
it's yeah, it's really so sad. I mean, when I saw the percentage decline in the cuts, it's like 97, 98%. I mean, I'm already thinking, okay, women who are Black and ethnic minorities. I mean, now the world, I believe it's the World Health Organization who has said that the world has more non-whites than whites. So globally, we are now not the ethnic minority. Um, but I went to a culturally awareness training, I believe it was, and it was very quickly pointed out that globally you may not necessarily be um, ethnic minority, but here in England we are. It's very quickly pointed out. And I thought, okay, I mean, I didn't, yeah, I didn't react to it, but um, women who are of color, there is so many, there are so many challenges that we face
Mm,
just waking
yeah,
up, black or Asian. Yeah, just waking
I
up
always say
black or
that.
Asian. There,
Well, yeah,
there,
you're.
there's so many there's so many challenges we face, and when we already face those challenges, in comparison to our white counterparts. I mean, this is a platform where we obviously respect everyone, but the statistics show, and then you implement 97, 90, 98% cuts. Who is it affecting? What are you doing
Yeah,
to our women? What are you doing to our people? And so this is one of the reasons why we're coming out and we're saying, actually, you know what? Yes, individually we're a voice, but when we come together as women, we roar, and we are ready to roar, because this can't just keep happening. It
no,
really can't. And going back to what you were saying, if there was a space created, safely created, I mean, the world is wisening up now. We're becoming a whole lot more smarter. But really, if there was a space within the maternal space, maternal health care for baby loss, pregnancy loss, whether it's a late miscarriage, whether it's an ectopic pregnancy, whether it's um uh uh, uh I mean, there's so many different types
yeah,
of
there is.
miscarriage, early
Yeah,
miscarriage, full-term stillbirth. There's
yeah,
all sorts. Just
yeah, medical
create a safe
terminations.
space. Yes. If there was a safe space, then you would not have felt comfortable at the time, just having a miscarrying at work, and then because I have a promotion, I feel like I just need to continue. You shouldn't have to determine or decide that, okay, baby is gone, but I've just been promoted. You see what I mean? And it's
Mm-hmm.
really so sad, even up until now, because I experienced something very similar. I had a condition called intrahepatic cholestasis of the liver. And I itch so badly in pregnancy because my liver just does not function. My bile acids become absolutely erratically out of order. I have to go to the hospital twice every, well, let me say had, because I don't plan to have any more children. But just putting that one out there in the atmosphere, Lord. Um, yeah, so I experienced such trauma. I at the time I worked in an international bank in my local city, and I remember that within our system, apparently women don't go on maternity leave before 8 months unless they have a medical condition.
Mm,
Now,
yeah,
ICP is a medical condition, but because nobody within senior management, in my opinion, had any knowledge of intrahepatic cholestasis of the liver, I was deemed, oh my God, this girl always has a problem. Or there she goes again.
uh,
I would be itching my fingers. I lost so much of my hair. I'd be itching my scalp. I'd be itching my feet. My husband bought me a whole range of brushes, except
oh
a
dear.
wire brush. That's the only thing I didn't have, a wire brush. You know, the wire brush
Yeah,
that we
yeah, yeah.
use back in
You
the
would have hurt
Caribbean
yourself
areas.
with that, yeah.
Yeah, but it felt like I needed it at times.
Mm.
And because of that, um, I lost a pregnancy. I lost twins actually. Then months later went into a pregnancy, and ICP continued after the pregnancy. So
Oh.
I lost a pregnancy, had the itching, went into another pregnancy with the itching, and then my third child, who's my little girl, after she was born, after I gave birth to her, continued with the itch and went back to work with the itch. And again, it wasn't acknowledged. Um, why am I saying these things? Because not only does the NHS need to do better, our workplaces need to do better
Mm-hmm.
as well. Our workplaces need to be more representative of women who have just, whether it's had a loss, or whether they're pregnant, or whether they've just given birth, whatever stage of being a mother you are at, or whatever your experience is, workplaces need to do a whole lot more, because my
Yeah.
experience was so bitter, so much so that a colleague and I, now part of the offerings of our job was to do a degree. A colleague and I, she's Spanish, a Spanish lady. We started our job on the same day. I went on maternity leave at month 7 because I had a medical condition. But because she stayed on, I went on maternity leave at month 8. According to the bank's policy, I was withdrawn from my degree course when I went back and I was asked to restart the degree. And when I protested, it was a whole range of what do we call it? Is it constructive dismissal? I felt like I was being set
Oh,
up to leave my job. Yes. I felt like I was
okay.
being set up by my managers to leave my job. And I actually left the job, not because I wasn't competent or capable, but because my managers had put me at a particular place. And when I decided that I don't know, I can't identify with that lady, in terms of what you've branded me and where you've placed me,
Mm.
I was reported to senior management, and apparently, um, they were just waiting to fire me. They were waiting for me to go back to work, and they were waiting for me to, just slip up where
Yeah.
where they would be forgiving. That's what came back to me. And where did it come from? They contacted my new educational provider and gave them this information. And
Oh
they said to
my
the new
gosh.
Yes, and they said to the new education provider, "You do not understand. This lady is smart on her CV. Wait until she
Oh
opens her mouth. You understand how
my God.
not so smart she is." And at the
That's
time, my
actually
education,
illegal.
there you go. And at the time, my education provider said, da, 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 da. I wouldn't go into, too many details. But he said, your managers are waiting to fire you. And this all started because I had intrahepatic cholestasis of the liver. It's a condition that causes stillbirth. And so you can imagine, I too had 5 pregnancies in 5 years. I've had 6 babies in 5 years, and thankfully I have only, I have the three, and I lost only three. And so yeah, it's. I mean, my heart. I'm sorry if I sound so overly passionate about this, but workplaces need to do
Yeah,
better.
no.
That's the
You're
point
right.
I'm trying to drive home.
Oh no, 100%. My work, when it happened to me, they didn't understand. They had no idea. This is why the 24-week rule is so important to me, because they had
Yes.
no idea about that rule. They believed that I wasn't entitled to maternity leave. If I needed time off, I had to take annual leave or sick leave. I had to educate them. I had to teach them and show them and get them to change their policies. But the thing is, it takes so much strength from you to do this. And if you're grieving and going through trauma and everything else at the same time, it is so difficult. And so many people don't. And I understand why they don't, because it's so hard. And then, but because of that,
Yes.
I genuinely believe certain people bank on that. They bank on people giving up because it's so hard, and they make it as hard as possible for them. And so they just walk away. But I
Yeah.
wasn't having that. I mean, it took me over a year, so after I lost my son, to build the strength back up again to be able to take that battle on. But I did, and as a result of it, now they know the law, they know how it works, and they've had to change their policies and procedures. And so any person that comes after me should be treated accordingly. And I don't just stop there. I was like, okay, well, you need to look at your policies and procedures. They're not very trauma informed either, because I
Yeah.
went back to
That's
work.
another area.
Yeah, and the NHS is just as bad. I went back to work and I didn't have any area, any space that was for me, private to me. So I managed retirement living schemes, so extra care schemes. So for example, one of the building that I was in at the time, it had 55 flats in it. And and there was even more residents than that, because some of them were 2 bedrooms, so there'd be husband and wife, and they'd have their families come and visit. I also had carers based in the building as well. So my office was downstairs, right by the front door, and it was a free for all. So even when I had my sign on the door to say I'm in a meeting, I would still get the residents banging on the door. So I didn't have any privacy. So if I was having a moment and I needed time for myself, I didn't have that. I didn't even have a toilet that was mine. I had to share the toilet with the residents. So I did request to get a private toilet, and then one of the residents put super glue on the door. But that's another story. But yeah, it's
It's
about
not a
being
laughing
trauma
matter. I'm
informed.
sorry.
No, it's not, but that's what happened. So, but it's about being trauma informed and and thinking, understanding if people are unsure on how to support somebody, what to do. Like I say, if it's a baby, if it's early pregnancy, it's a late pregnancy, it doesn't matter. I always call it baby loss because I don't think it matters how far
Of
you are
course, it
into your
doesn't.
pregnancy. You've lost a baby, and
Of
if that's how
course.
you choose to identify, so not everybody does, and I respect that as well.
Very true.
Um,
Yes, of course.
but if you choose to identify as you've lost a baby, then that's what it is. It's baby loss. We shouldn't be putting terms on it because it's a different week in gestation or anything, because it can still
Of course.
impact us just as much.
Very
I
much
know it's
so.
like I say, I know it's hard to think that, for some people to think that somebody who loses their baby at 7 weeks into their pregnancy, it can be just as devastating as somebody who has a stillbirth at 37 weeks and has to give birth to their baby. Of course it can, because like I said, everybody's hard is hard. We don't know people's journeys. We don't know what they've been through. Somebody could have been spending 20 years of their life trying to get pregnant, spent 10 years on
There you go.
IVF, spent their whole
There
life
you go.
savings, finally got pregnant the once, and after 7 weeks, they lose the baby. So,
But you
yes,
know
that
what,
would be.
Louisa? Sorry to interject. You're actually speaking about one of my relatives. That's exactly what's happened. They've spent all their life savings, about £80,000, trying to get pregnant, got pregnant once, and then, excuse me, woke up just randomly one morning. The day started as normal as every other day and had a miscarriage, had complications and health issues after, and then needed to have a hysterectomy. Those are her child.
Oh,
Yeah, her, and she must be about, and she's not 50 yet. She's not 50 and spent a good part of nearly 20 years doing that. £80,000. That's a
and
good portion of anything if you want to
yeah,
put it to a savings or a house or whatever, an investment.
yeah,
So yes, what you're saying, you are speaking about real life, maybe not necessarily knowing who to sort of tag that story on, but people like that actually do exist.
yeah, they do. And I've met women. I mean, because of my podcast, I get to meet lots of different women with lots of different experiences. So I have met women like that, and I've learned myself to be considerate about people's journeys more, because I've never had IVF or anything like that. So I never knew what that journey looked like for somebody until I
Of
interviewed
course.
somebody. So it's things like taking into consideration all the hormones that they have to take and they have to put their body through. I interviewed a lady
Yep,
who, in the end, she gave up because she lost herself. She completely
yep.
lost herself in that process, that she couldn't even recognize herself anymore. And so in the
Mhm.
end, she chose herself. And I
And
respect her so much for that as well.
oh my goodness, what you're saying is such a big topic. I mean, you and I can touch on so many things that we don't have time to talk about today. But what you're saying is so much of a big topic in that. I mean, I've never had IVF likewise, but a similar thing happened to me in that I remember when I lost my very first pregnancy, I was so ashamed of myself because my husband and I, we had very good, decent, settled life at the time. We were um much younger than we are now. And all my husband wanted was a little boy at the time. That was just his absolute dream. That would have been the T in his perfect. He had everything else according to him, and he just wanted this little boy. And being Christians, we so my husband had moved from Ghana that year to join me, and as soon as he came, I became pregnant. And we were told by a prophet, you're gonna have a little boy in December 2018. Now, when we got pregnant, and then our little boy's due date was the 23rd of December, we were like, oh my goodness, God, you're
Oh
so good, you're
wow.
so amazing. But who really can question God and his decisions? 5 months down the line, I lost our little boy. And I tagged a type of shame onto myself that I tell you what,
Mhm.
I cannot explain. I was so ashamed of myself as a
Mhm.
daughter, as a wife. I felt like my sisters, at the time, my brother's wife, they had given my parents grandchildren without a loss. Now I'm the first child. My husband and I have never been married before, so we were in a good place and still are, thank God. Still are, thank God. Let me put that out there as well again in the atmosphere. Um, in such a fantastic place in our marriage. And so I was like, all they've asked me for was
Mm,
a son and a grandson. And I felt
yeah.
like I couldn't deliver. And I looked at myself and I condemned myself heavily. Now, let me tell you what else caused, lots and lots of self-condemnation. That's one aspect of it. Um, the second one was I remember giving birth on a Sunday. So we went to church in the morning. On the Wednesday prior, we were told that obviously baby was lost and so on and so forth. I was able to look at him on the machine, on the screen. He'd been dead for a good little while, and I suspected when he died. It was about a month earlier when I'd gone to see a midwife who pretty much did nothing except tell me that she thinks I had fibroids that were degenerating at the time. And my pregnancy visit was just a discussion, wherein it shouldn't have been. It should have been a very good
Mm,
check because up until that point of time, I was bleeding, and then I'd all of a sudden stopped. So I said to my husband, "I've stopped bleeding. I'm actually really enjoying the pregnancy now." And I was naive because baby was moving, and because baby was moving, I felt comforted. But
well, you
he
would.
was small and he was in water. Now he would move. When I went to give birth, I was in an absolutely beautifully decorated room. And I know you've done some work around this as well. And I'd like for you to talk to us about the work you have done. Absolutely excellent work. And this is why I follow what you do, because I'm hoping to do this in my local hospital too. Now, let me retract a bit. When I went to give birth on that Sunday night, Sunday afternoon, I don't know if the person next door was drunk or if,
Mm,
I don't know what his situation was, but he was the most overenthused man I have ever heard and I've been to the maternity ward several times. I've never heard anybody like that. He was either drunk or, like I said, very overly enthused. Now, why do I say that? Because besides hearing every sound from the baby monitors, and besides hearing the congratulations of parents becoming grandparents and the spouses and partners giving birth, this man was
mm,
shouting to the top of his voice. And I could only comfort myself in this way. I said, maybe he was exactly where I was in his past. He had lost his child. Maybe he was told when he was growing up he'd never
mm,
be a father. Maybe he was told that his wife could never give birth or his partner could never give birth. I don't know what he was told, but this man had every right to rejoice. Now, my problem was not in my hearing because I knew I could never take my baby home. I just given birth to him. I was worried about even holding him because I was
mm,
worried that I would hold him and it would create a bond that I wouldn't know how to break. And in that moment, my husband lost me as well.
mm,
Because not only was I ashamed of myself, the rejoicing I heard from the room next door, my husband couldn't have those shouts of joy and happiness.
mm,
And I felt guilty for that. I felt like I'd taken that away from him. And so in my advocacy work, what I am petitioning for, I've got a live petition out at the moment. Um, I'm petitioning for hospitals in the UK, every single hospital, whether you're private or a public hospital, as long as there is a maternity ward, there must be a space that's soundproof because
mhm,
we need to be able to, mothers who will experience or are experiencing pregnancy loss, they should be able to start their grief with dignity. There is no dignity in your grief process when you're hearing, and I'm grateful for for our systems compared to other parts of the world. Grateful for what we have, but certainly we need to do better. And
oh God,
so
yeah.
I know you've done some work around that as well, Louisa. So tell us, please, about the work you're doing in your local hospital, projects you've started, projects that you intend to continue with, and how if there's any type of support that you're asking people for, how they can jump on the bandwagon, support your causes. Tell us about the podcast as well, the foundation that you have, and so on and so forth.
So after Zion, I mean, it took me a while. I was in survival mode for a couple of years, I'll be honest with you. But I took each battle on one by one. So work was one of them, getting them to look at policies and procedures, getting them to make sure that they've got they know the law, they've got it correct, and they're trauma informed, and they're using that lens when they're supporting people. And then the hospital was next. So when I lost my son, there was no bereavement policy or bereavement midwife. So you can imagine the support that I got. I didn't get any. In fact, I remember when I left the hospital, I remember asking the midwives, because I was due to have my 24-week check the following week. And I asked the midwives, do I need to contact the community health midwives? Or would you do that for me? Because I'm very aware. I've worked in corporate world for a long time. I know how things work. And I know that organisations and departments don't always communicate with each other. So I specifically asked that question before I left the hospital. And they were like, oh, no, don't worry. Of course, we'll contact them and we'll cancel your appointment and let them know. Following week, I get the phone call from a 24-week checkup. And I have to tell the midwife on the phone that I lost my baby. And then I find myself condoling her as well. So, I mean, this is not something you want to be doing within the first week of losing a baby. Yeah, I mean, it was lockdown as well. So everything was just exasperated during that time. So when I finally did get the stroke, because I fell pregnant quite quickly after losing my son Zion. Within a couple of months, I fell pregnant again, and I had my rainbow baby Marley, who is here today. So it took me. I waited. I had him, and then he ended up in hospital at 2.5 weeks old with sepsis. Well, I was told at the time it was a urine infection. I only found out months later that it was sepsis when I saw it that in the letter that the hospital had written to my GP. That's how I found out. But yeah, at that point, I was like, do you know what? Enough is enough now. Things need to change. So since then, I've got on at my hospital. We've now got a bereavement midwife. We've got a bereavement policy. They've also got a specialised psychologist team who work with women who've suffered things like PTSD after a loss. So it's called the Oceans team. I believe that they're around London and things area as well. So they work within the Bedford Hospital, and I won't sit here and take all the credit, because I know there's other mums that have done like me and campaigned and got on to their cases as well. But since losing my son, they've now got a memorial garden. You can get benches and put benches down. You can go and visit. They started, well, because they used to put you on the ward with all the other mums.
Yes.
And make you have to walk through the ward with all the other babies, crying and everything else, and that's just torture and torment. Like you said, it's just absolute torture for a family that have just lost their baby. So they've taken that on board as well. So what they started doing, I shouldn't laugh, but what they started doing was allowing people to exit through the fire exit. But the feedback that I got was that they felt like a dirty little secret, like they were just being shoved out the back somewhere, and it wasn't a very nice stairwell to walk down. It wasn't looked after, and it just looked like that they were not right. Something was wrong with them, and they have to go down this exit and they can't use the other exit. So again, I've supported another lady who I know raised some funds the other year to get that all decorated. So it's all been decorated all nice now, and it's got options for people to put their baby's names on the walls and things, and they've got like a little stone garden. So if you want to do a stone for your baby, you can do that at the bottom of the stairs. So they're much better now at being trauma informed, and now because we've got the bereavement midwife as well, and she's got her own lived experience too, and she's a lovely lady, so she puts on lots of things as well. I urge them to look at their language when they're talking with families. I got the impression that they dealt with losses quite often because of the way that they were just so dismissive, or it didn't seem to impact them. Apart from my actual midwife, I mean, I'll shout her out every single time. I cannot fault her. She was with me as soon as she came on shift until she finished shift. And I think if she could have stayed with me for longer, she probably would. Like, she was Caroline, her name was, and I've got PTSD and I don't remember much, but I do remember that. And she was amazing. She really was. But not everybody was like her, So there's things like they gave me the camera to charge after my son had passed away. So, forward thinking, charge that you knew more than I did that I was going to lose my baby that day. So you should have had that camera charged and ready for when he was born to take photos. Because it never entered my head. It never entered my head to take photos of my son. I was fully living in the moment. So I wouldn't have
Yes.
never pulled a phone out and take this. It was just by chance, by the grace of God. My sister, she had the foresight to do that. And again, it's because we were FaceTiming my husband at the time that she was just taking photos whilst on FaceTime.
While on FaceTime. Oh.
Yeah. So thank goodness, because I would never have had any pictures of my son alive otherwise. And my
Mhm.
husband wouldn't have had those pictures either because he never got to meet him while he was alive. So it's all of these little
And
things that started to
and
occur to me.
sorry, Louisa, and his older siblings as well, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you come around my house, there's pictures of him all over the place. I mean, literally, I'm on my desk right now, and this is what I'm looking at. He's right there with me.
Oh.
So, but this is thank goodness this is for my sister. I wouldn't have had that without her because I was.
Mhm.
This is the thing about being trauma informed. So this is another thing that I had to get to the hospital to think about using like phoning a friend, for example. When I went to hospital, I was there on my own. And my husband wasn't allowed to come with me, so I went on my own, and they deemed it fit to tell me that I was going to lose my baby, and then expected me to listen to everything else they said after that, and then make
And take
informed
it in.
decisions. Yeah,
And take it in. How?
yeah, yeah. So I'm like, how do you? That's never going to happen. It's come on, you're the medical professional. You know better than I do how trauma impacts the body and the brain.
Of
So
course.
it's things like that I just think it was so behind, especially in this day and age when everybody's so woke. Why are we so behind? So I'm that person that will just keep slapping you in the face with the new policies and procedures, with the new research that's out there. Like again, they were using out of date research. So I took the time, and this is why I know it takes so much strength. And this is why I do urge people and I do encourage people to stand up for yourself and to challenge. I know that it's hard. I really do. I know. Trust me. I know. I've been in a 4-year battle now with the hospital. Um, I know how hard it is. But if we don't do this, then we don't affect change. All it is our sorrows and our woes. They just go unnoticed. They go unheard, and they can ignore it. They can ignore it. It's something. If it's not written down, it never happened.
Yes, certainly.
So.
Louisa, it's mental health awareness week. Just about the closing of it. We're getting towards the tail end of two things that have been very, very significant to me. And I just want to acknowledge as well, before I ask you to answer the question, the work of Alicia Burnett,
Mhm.
who's doing an absolutely fantastic job with Black Baby Loss Awareness Week. I haven't been able to support her as much as I want to. Um, for very many reasons. However, Alicia, we acknowledge the great work that you're doing. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for, just standing up and making representation for women like yourself. And to be very honest, for all women, women who
Mm.
have experienced baby loss, whether it was how many ever years ago, women who are currently experiencing baby loss, because whether we like it or not, there are thousands of women laid in hospitals all around the country today who are going through the process or will go through the process in the days to come or the weeks to come or the months to come, who will experience pregnancy loss. And your work is so, 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 so important and is definitely making a difference. So I just want
Mhm.
to acknowledge Alicia. Secondly, it's Mental Health Awareness Week. And mental health gets severely impacted. I mean, mental health is already a challenge when it's poor. And mental health coupled with pregnancy loss, baby loss, um, neonatal loss, anything along those lines, it's even the more severely compounded. So, I would like for you to just, sort of in closing, Louisa, tell us, how do you keep yourself, um, I guess if you like, mentally and emotionally regulated especially when it comes to remembering things like birthdays and anniversaries. How do you? Can you enlighten us a little bit on that? And if
Okay.
anybody has found themselves in this space of, again, pregnancy loss, baby loss, neonatal sort of loss, do you have a framework maybe you can share with us? If you don't, just give us some advice, some encouragement around how you go through those challenges when those significant dates come around.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken me a long time, I'll be honest. And I want to just put it out there that I have good days and I have bad days. I am not okay all the time. But that is
Sure,
okay. I've learned that that is
perfectly.
okay. And it's about accepting those sorts of things instead of trying to fight it. That's something I learned over the years. And I also want to put it out there that if you are suffering with your mental health right now, please don't be ashamed. Please don't think there's something wrong with you, because I almost
Yeah,
guarantee you, almost every single person who's experienced baby loss at some point, it has impacted their mental health. Okay. So,
certainly.
yeah. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I was diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety after losing my son. Um, and for me to begin with, the best way for me to manage it was yoga. I'll be honest. Yoga was the best way for me to regulate stuff because of the way
Right.
the way our systems are. And unless you've got lots of money in the bank, you're not going to be able to access support, conventional therapies that easy. Because if you're going through the NHS, the waiting lists are ridiculous. So and that on its own can be very traumatizing because you have to speak to so many professionals and you have to
Yeah,
repeat yourself and your story.
every one of them.
Yes. And then you normally on average get about 6 sessions, and they expect you to be fixing that 6 sessions. And it's for one, it's never about fixing. You are not broken. We are not broken. We do not need
Exactly.
fixing. And I think the sooner you come to that realization, that you're halfway there. You're already on the path to healing. So we're not broken. We don't need fixing. It's okay. I've learned that it's okay for me to feel sad sometimes. It's
Yes,
okay to feel
indeed.
happy. And ways that I regulate is yoga. There are lots of different things. I'm very holistic. I like holistic techniques. So I will do yoga, I do breath works, and I movement. Any type of movement. So I've recently discovered MIM, medicine in movement, which I think is absolutely amazing. There's lots of science behind it as well as to how when we physically move, it releases the trapped trauma. So there's lots of people who aren't taught to self-regulate. I was never taught to self-regulate as a child. Our family policy was we internalize everything, we withdraw, and we shut down. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I did when I lost my son. To begin with, I internalized everything, I withdrew, and I shut down, and that's what I call the zombie stage. But once I started talking a bit more and started incorporating movement in that. It started with walks, and as it's got time's gone on, it's developed more and more physical. But mim is just you're basically dancing. So it can be as simple as when you're in the kitchen and you're cooking, put your favorite song on and move your hips to that song. Okay, I know it sounds bizarre, but you're activating that your certain muscles, and it tells your body that it's safe and it's able to help release that trauma. And there's different points I've learned about things like vagus nerves, different points in your body that if we use that as another quick way to release trauma and to bring it to regulate ourselves. So I've basically have done a lot of research. I spent the last 4 years doing a lot of research into trauma and and stress and the physical impacts it has on our bodies and how we can best to manage that. But I can't sit and say, if you do this, it's going to work for you, because there's something that I have learned that we're all individuals. So you need to find what works for you. But once you
Of
find that
course.
thing that works for you, just keep hold of it and remember to go back to it, because that's something that as humans, we forget. We're not very good at doing. When we become stressed and we become overwhelmed, the first thing to go out the door and out the window is our self-care. and that
Mm-hmm.
and we if you're overwhelmed, you've got loads of work to do, you're focused on that, you've got to clean the house, you've got to sort the kids out, and you put yourself at that bottom of the list. So if you want to do exercise, oh, I haven't got time to exercise, I need to do this, I need to do that. Well, actually, if you put the exercise at the top of your list and then do everything else afterwards, you will find that the rest of the day will be a lot easier.
Course.
It's helping
Falls
you to
into
self-regulate.
sequence, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's helping you to self-regulate, and it's helping you to empty that cup. I always use the example that my cup is full, and when I know it's full, I know I can feel it in my body. I know I need to go and do some yoga or some type of movement. And even if I'm just turning the tap and a couple of drips have coming out, I still feel better for it because I can feel the difference. I've learned to listen to my body, and yoga is very good at doing that. It teaches you to listen to your body. But there's so many different ways you can regulate yourself. Is what works for you. So if you're into art and you like painting or you like drawing, or if you like sports, go and play some football. If you like your music, listen to your music or play music, sing music.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever works for you, find
Yeah.
that and love yourself. That's the gift my son
So
gave me.
important.
Yeah, it's so important. And love yourself. My son gave me that gift before he was born. I put myself at the bottom of the list and everybody else is in front of me. I don't do that anymore, and I'm learning not to feel bad for it. It takes time, as a process, but I'm persevering because I am important too, and life
Of
is
course you
important
are.
too. So it's
Mm-hmm.
about taking that time. So I do that now. I take time for myself. I will go off for a little walk by myself. Last year, I even went away for a couple of days by myself. I've never done that before,
Nice.
but I did. I went by myself, no husband, no children, nobody at all, just myself. And I went for walks every day. Nature is another a form of calming. There's certain trees, the science says there's certain trees that lets off certain chemicals that naturally relaxes us. So it's to say it's finding what works for you, but remembering to always return to that. That's the thing. Don't let that slip, because we can do that, and that's when we then become overwhelmed. We can't self-regulate. Everything then becomes so intense, and we're seeing things that aren't even there. Um, so it's just about taking that time just to step back, give yourself a moment. And it's okay, be kind to yourself, because like I said, we're not perfect. We all have our moments, and as time goes on, the more we learn about ourselves, then the more we'll be able to self-regulate. But it's not easy. It's not always easy. But yeah, that's
It
my
really is.
advice.
Thank you so, so much, Louisa. Loved having you on the show. Again, I'm so sorry for your losses. I also would like to celebrate with you the lives of the children that you do have. I know that you're a very happy mom. We've had several conversations before, and I know you have a different glow when you speak about your children, whether they're the ones that you are able to raise now or the ones that you carry in your heart. And I just love that about you. Thank you also for the great work that you're doing in your local community, the work that you've done in terms of like improving policies at your workplace, at the local hospital, just
Thank you.
joining force with other moms and just making impact and making a difference. I believe sometimes people feel like um, what they have to contribute is so insignificant, but whilst you may not necessarily understand or acknowledge that you're changing, or you acknowledge that you're not changing the whole world, you're changing somebody else's world with whatever little thing that you're doing. And really sometimes that's genuinely all that matters, that we wake up, we're intentional about changing somebody else's world through our advocacy, through podcasts like this, through women getting together and empowering each other, through
Hmm.
conversations. I've said hello to women who with whom the conversation has just turned into, actually, I had a loss. Oh, really? Me too. And it's, developed into something completely different. So
Mm,
thank you again for the insight and the points that you raised. Women, men, honestly, we don't give our men enough
no.
space. And we don't give them enough of a platform to air their views as well in terms of their experience of baby loss. So, women, men, partners, spouses, in whatever capacity you define your relationship, if you're experiencing baby loss or you will experience it at some point in the future, please, like Louisa said, be kind to yourself. Remember, you're important. Be gracious with yourself. Be gracious with yourself because you matter, you're important too. I love as well, Louisa, that you said we don't need fixing, we're not broken.
Yeah, no, we
And no,
don't.
we haven't done anything wrong either.
No.
We really haven't.
Sorry,
Go ahead,
I
please.
just wanted to say as well, 'cause I wanted to say
Oh,
this
that's
to you
okay.
earlier as well, when you were saying about how you felt when you had your first loss and how you blamed yourself. I really hope that as time's gone on, that feeling and those thoughts have changed because
Oh, of course.
you, yeah, and I say because I know that we all, and often lots of us feel like that at the beginning,
Hmm.
but it's
Hmm.
not, it's nothing, it's not our fault. It really isn't our fault. We can't, you know, nobody knows what to do in those situations, and even if it's happened to you before, you still don't know what to do in those situations. And, this is why I do what I do by having these conversations. I've got my podcast where we talk about baby loss. I've got my company now, Zion's Lighthouse, after my son, where I'll do cult consultancy and go into organizations and help educate them and support them as well, because we need to have these conversations. The
Of
more we have
course.
these conversations, the more change that we will make, and the more people will feel comfortable, because like we said, so many people experience loss. We know ourselves, 1 in 4 women experience loss.
Of
And if you're
course.
a woman of color, then that's exasperated even more. I mean, it depends what type of loss. We can break it down. If it's a miscarriage, it's 40%, 43% increase, it's over double the chance of your baby being stillborn if your baby's of color. So there's things like that as well, that there's so many layers that we need to have these conversations. The more we have these conversations, the more comfortable people will feel to have these conversations and to
Of
share
course.
their losses. And by
Of
talking about
course.
our losses, it does help us. It can
It
help you
does.
heal. I mean, okay, I can't speak for everybody. I can't say that is for everybody, but I've spoken to lots of families through my work who have suffered baby loss, and I haven't come across anybody yet that hasn't wanted to talk about it. And then once they see that I've created a space for them, they're more than happy to come into that space and talk with me. And I get lots of people talking to me about losses now because they know that I'm so open about it. And you'll
Mhm.
find the same thing, I'm sure, Lisa, that
Of
people will
course, you're
come to
right.
you.
Yeah. I echo exactly what you're saying, especially through these podcast platforms. People want to talk, especially if they've been in a culture, because these things are still in some cultures an absolute taboo to talk about. It's the woman's fault, or there's some kind of a problem with her body, or it's karma. So many women are made to believe so many things that are so untrue. So women, men as well, they want to talk about these things, and so I completely agree with what you're saying. I just like to add in closing that healing for some is a destination. Healing for others look like a revolving door, so you go round and round and round in circles before you ultimately get to, whether it's your destination, if you like, or an evolving journey, if you like. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what healing looks like for you, but whatever it is, and whatever shape healing takes on for you, heal. And there are women
Mm-hmm,
like Louisa and I, there's so many others out there who value your pain, who value your tears, who understand that you're hurting and you feel like this pain may never end. We see you, we hear
mm-hmm.
you, love yourself, and you're valued. Thank you so much, Louisa. I enjoyed having you on today. Thank you for sharing your deeply personal story. I'm sure wherever it's heard, it will definitely make impact. So thank you again for sharing.
And thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all.